So the next speaker is Oded Ben-Horin. I'm afraid my pronunciation is correct.
Actually, it's very good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy. So Oded is from Western Norway University of Applied Sciences, Norway. He is the coordinator of the Global Science Opera, and he is also a co-developer of that concept, which was initiated as a cornerstone project in the UN sanctioned International Year of Light 2015. He also the deputy chair of the Center of Creativities, Arts and Science in Education at Stord Island in Norway. So he has many activities. Maybe he will introduce himself in his talk. So today's his title is Global Science Opera, GSO, Research and Teacher Education in the Interdisciplinary Global Classroom. Okay, please start.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, and can you please confirm that you see the presentation?
Yes, I can see your presentation very
Thank you.
clearly.
Actually, that was a very nice introduction. And again, welcome from Western Norway. It's especially exciting to welcome you from here because the conference was actually supposed to be here, but unfortunately, due to COVID, we had to change our plans. However, being part of this online seminar and session is an extremely exciting experience, and so I think there has been a very beautiful solution to the whole thing, which is inspiring for the future. So I'm going to be presenting the Global Science Opera. Some of you are familiar with this initiative. Some of you have also been participating during the past years. And I'm trying to go to the next screen, however, not necessarily moving.
Do you see any arrow or just click arrow on your laptop?
I'm doing that, however, it's not happening. Well,
okay. Could somebody
I'll just try a quick stop share. And I'll try one more time to share. Let's see. So, can you see the screen now?
Okay, yes, so please start your
let's see if it moves now.
presentation.
Yeah, do you see a new screen now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So my talk is going to be divided into three themes. One is the history of the Global Science Opera since 2014. The second is the research results that we have accumulated so far and some ideas for future research. And the third is a new European initiative which Rosa Duran started presenting yesterday, or was presenting as part of her talk, which started late in 2019 and which has teacher training within the context of the Global Science Opera as one of its main foundations. So I would like to briefly say or try to explain what Global Science Opera is. That's always a challenge because Global Science Opera is many different things. It's a global creative education initiative. It is a science education context and concept. It is also, per definition, the first globally produced opera productions in history. So it's always interesting to try and convey what it actually is. And here I have chosen some images of some of the people in the 40 or 45 countries who have participated so far, just to give you a brief introduction. So starting on the top left-hand corner, And then moving clockwise, we have a group of dance students in Norway. Then we have a group of dance students in Antofagasta in Chile. Then we have a music educator at a primary school in the UK. We have Dutch students practicing for an opera production in the upper right-hand corner. We have a Greek music professor and flutist, and his name is Petros Stergiopoulos. He's been very active in contributing to the GSO actually even before it began. And then we have high school students in Japan with a Norwegian researcher there in the middle, Janne Roberstad. And then we have pupils in India preparing for the production in 2018 with their educators, which some of you also might recognize. We have Brazilian students in the city of Campos celebrating together with the mayor of that city following one of the productions. We have an Iranian science education teacher in a high school in Tehran, who also some of you might recognize. And we have many more people from countries in all of the inhabited continents participating in the Global Science Opera. And bringing this together into a unified opera production is, as I said, per definition, a representation of the first globally produced operas in history. So where do we find ourselves in the educational context? We are at the intersection of arts, creativity, science, cross-cultural action, didactical innovation, digital technology infrastructures, and of course, we are in the world of education here. As the chair presented, the Global Science Opera started its way in the context of the International Year of Light, which was in 2015. And the idea came about by putting together various previous existing initiatives into a new unity. And in 2014, Rosa Duran, who all of you know, recommended taking this theme of light, and specifically light pollution, as a scientific inspiration for the first global science opera. And we didn't really know how to accomplish this. We didn't even know if it's possible. But the idea that we had was to invite one school, the pupils and teachers of which you see here from Porto in Portugal, to develop a storyline for an opera based on that scientific theme. And then when they had done that, we divided that into 36 separate scenes, as there were 36 countries participating that year, and sent a short scene or an idea for a short scene to our contact person in each of those countries and asked him or her to develop a 2 to 3 minute opera scene with the pupils in that country or university students or artists, and in that way be part of the creation of a global opera. And our idea was to invite each country to live stream their scene or pre-send us a video of their scene so that we could stream all that out in sequence, and whoever would be sitting at home and watching would see the whole sequence, which lasted about 1.5 hours that year, and hence be watching a global science opera. The main character in the first Global Science Opera, the character's name was Joao, and here you see a pupil in another country, Spain, performing the character of Joao in a Spanish television studio. And Joao's story was getting involved in the whole question of light pollution by exploring the universe from the Big Bang until today. I would like to play you a short message by Andre Kuipers, who is a European astronaut at the European Space Agency. In 2015, shortly before the Global Science Opera's first premiere, our partners in Holland, from Speljewijs in Holland, traveled to the European Space Agency's Technology Center in Holland and interviewed Andre Kuipers to ask him his opinion about such a production. And here is his message. Please let me know if the sound is not playing.
I can hear the sound very clearly.
Good, thank you.
Hello, I'm Andre Kuipers. I'm a European astronaut from the Netherlands, and working in space made me realize how important it is to work together, to understand each other, a global cooperation. And that's why I'm very delighted that the first global science opera is taking place, a cooperation between so many different people from all over the world, an innovative cooperation between art, science and technology. It's so good that people from the artistic, educational and scientific community are working together. And it's fantastic that we have the premiere of Skylight during Space Week 2015. Very important, there's a lot of young people who participate in this. Exploring science together as part of a global classroom. It's a great idea. Congratulations everybody.
And as you just saw, Carl Pennypacker, who you all know, was actually the composer of the finale music, which you were hearing there as Andre Kuipers was speaking. And now let's see if I can move to the next screen. Yes, in 2016, following the huge excitement of Skylight and the realization that, yes, this can be done, which, by the way, we did not take for granted in 2015. We proceeded to realize the second production, this time in collaboration with our partners at the CMS experiment at CERN, and a scientific theme of the ghost particles, which was inspired by Dr. Sophocles Sotiriou in the educational and research organization Ελληνογερμανική Αγωγή in Athens, Greece. And his idea was to have an opera about these ghost particles that we know exist, but we cannot see. And these are the photon, the Higgs boson, and the neutrino, each of which, as he explained, we can detect, but we cannot see. And we had the honor of including a scientist participating live from CERN in the opera, and in that way literally meeting all the pupils who were participating due to the fact that they were partners in a European Commission Horizon 2020 project that we were participating in at the time, and called Creations. And of course, that was a huge inspiration for the Global Science Opera. Then in 2017, we were in touch with Bernard Voing from the European Space Agency, who told us about the European vision for a permanent moon village in the future. Actually, the vision is also shared by countries and continents beyond Europe, but he was the main inspiration for our 2017 opera, which we called Moon Village. And the story of Moon Village was to imagine what the school and education of the children who would be born on the moon, the first children ever born on the moon, literally, what kind of school and what kind of education would they have, would they need, and further, how could we describe creativity in that context? Because their life is going to be very different, of course. How will creativity and education be impacted by radiation, by gravity, which is very different than what it is here? And so that was a very inspiring global science opera. It was our third. Our fourth was in 2018 in collaboration with the Norwegian Institute for Marine Research and the global IMBER research institution. And here the main story was developed by the pupils at Skeisvang High School in Norway. And the opera, as you might imagine, was talking about our oceans and specifically raising the question of the ocean's health, questions of sustainability, and that was a very big inspiration, not least in the context of Europe's aims of creating a more responsible research and innovation oriented educational framework for its pupils. In 2019, the centennial of the proof of Einstein's general theory of relativity was celebrated by our opera Gravity, and in 2019 the main story was written by pupils in Principe and Brazil and Portugal. I'm sure you all know and see that very powerful connection, and which was hugely inspiring for creating an inquiry process in that context. Here you can see drawings by pupils in Spain, the pupils of Carmen Diaz and her colleagues, who, as part of their preparation for the Gravity opera. You see Einstein in some interesting situations and dialogues. Finally, we are currently in the midst of preparing the 2020 Global Science Opera, which is going to be streamed and performed live in and around the world in November, and this time dedicated to the theme of energy. It's called Energize, and the artwork here is by pupils in California. And so I have just mentioned some highlights which are difficult or even impossible to choose, because since 2014, thousands of people have been participating in Global Science Opera in more than 40 countries, and it would never be possible to realize any of that without them. And so I should be mentioning each and every person and each and every beautiful, beautiful idea that has been shared across country and continent and disciplinary boundaries. But right now we are moving on to the second part of my talk, and that is to try and pinpoint some areas of research that has been done and that may be done in the future. When I say research, it is a certain kind of artificial binary to, excuse me, to try and describe, excuse me, it's early in the morning here in Norway. So when I say research, there is a certain kind of artificial binary here to try and say that all the productions that have been done would be an implementation and a development rather than research, because actually they are much closer intertwined, or these ideas or initiatives or phenomena are much more closely intertwined than that. However, for the sake of clarity, let's focus on these areas of research that are emerging or could emerge. So first, global science opera as a global inquiry. Rosa was talking about inquiry yesterday. So what does it mean, or how can we expand our knowledge about what it means to collaborate on a single inquiry process as a global network? We have much to learn about that. We have much to learn about the interaction of science and arts, which, although is happening many places in beautiful, exciting, innovative, and creative ways, still has room for development of new knowledge. We need to conduct research about creativity in the context of the global science opera, because we know or we feel intuitively that it is creative. However, there is a potential to expand our knowledge regarding how we can describe the creativity in this specific context and what it is that we are doing here that actually allows creativity to emerge. We have begun to conduct research on the impact on schools together with Canadian colleagues here in Norway, and also gradually in other countries. There is research being done about the involvement of eco-design and eco-scenography in the opera, and in this way bridging our wish to do sustainability with on the other hand, a more balanced approach to how we allow science and arts to interact. And so the issue of using sustainable materials and knowing the ecological impact and artistic impact of involving these kinds of materials and approaches to materials is hugely important in global science opera, and some ideas about future research. So what is global inquiry? There are many ways of describing inquiry. Rosa was talking about several aspects yesterday. Right now, I'd like to approach inquiry through the lenses of this definition by John Dewey. Inquiry is the controlled or directed transformation of an indeterminate situation into one that is so determinate in its constituent distinctions and relations as to convert the elements of the original situation into a unified whole. So let's begin with the last two words. What is a unified whole here, and how do we know that we have it? Well, we have the performances of Global Science Opera, which represent a year-long process that has taken place. Those performances allow us to observe and acknowledge that there has been some kind of unity, which perhaps is not the only kind of unity that is possible in this context, but there is a unity. And now let's go back to the indeterminate situation. So what is an indeterminate situation? Well, to my mind, when we allow or when we invite Portuguese, Chinese, American, and European Space Agency science professors and educators to interact with an opera professional from Singapore and students and school pupils from Ireland and many others, but here are some examples of people who are interacting in the Global Science Opera. It is, we cannot take for granted what is going to emerge out of that interaction. We have the idea that, yes, this is going to be very creative or exciting, but before that begins, it is an indeterminate situation. And therefore, the process that we undergo when we do a global science opera, which again is represented by a performance at its end, is, to my understanding of John Dewey's approach to inquiry, something that qualifies as inquiry because it brings an indeterminate situation into a unified whole. The interaction of science and art has been going on for, we can say, thousands of years. Albert Einstein noticed it or lived it. Leonardo da Vinci lived it, and many other great figures that we enjoy being inspired by. And today in Europe and elsewhere in the world, there are many wonderful initiatives where science and art interact. Usually they are called STEAM, as Rosa was discussing yesterday. But we have to ask ourselves, what is the interaction? Is it multidisciplinary? Is it interdisciplinary? Is it interdisciplinary hyphenated? Is it transdisciplinary? And since we don't have time to go into all these terminologies, I would recommend that you Google UNESCO's report from 1986, which discusses them. Or is it perhaps what Chappell and her colleagues last year described as an entanglement, that is to say, a unique, one-of-a-kind entanglement and interaction between science and art activities which occur only in the specific context with which you are dealing at the moment. And these are themes of heated debate, literally. Very interesting debates where knowledge is being generated as we speak. And here you see one example by Fabien Legeron in France, who used scientific and artistic elements and ideas in the scene that he developed for the Global Science Opera Moon Village with his pupils in a way which is transdisciplinary to my mind, in the sense that the science and art were so closely related as to reach a situation where the borders between the disciplines are blurred. I cannot say what is science and what is art anymore when he is getting dressed up in a green screen, literally, and you see the pupil is sitting on a base of a green screen, and therefore when we see the opera looks to be floating, literally, and I really recommend you see this scene from the Moon Village Opera and see what they achieved. And so this is one example of a remarkable bridging of science and art into something that I don't know anymore how to describe which discipline it's in, and maybe that's the most exciting part of all of this. And so we need to conceptualize the interaction of science and art, or we need to open doors and find out where we can produce new knowledge and how and why, because I believe that the amount and importance of knowledge that can be produced at these intersections is enormous. And here is one conceptual model on the left. You have two groups of pupils in one classroom, for example, who are each starting an inquiry process in one of the disciplines. And after following a certain amount of the process, do not continue it on their own. Rather, they are allowing their friends in the other group to overtake their inquiry into the other discipline, and continuing this exchange, I imagine, is bringing about a unified transdisciplinary process in which the boundaries are blurred. And in the diagram on the right, you see this concept expanded to not two groups within a single classroom, but rather 10 schools in the global science opera, where, for example, 5 schools in 5 countries begin part of the process consciously in the domain of the arts, and after doing part of the process, send their still ongoing inquiry to 5 other schools in 5 other countries who continue to explore that in the domain of the other discipline and continue that exchange process. And I think this either has the potential to describe some of which has already been happening, but we haven't really constituted in just specifically this way, or a kind of schematic approach to how we can conceptualize the interaction of science and art in the global science opera in the future. And so these are actually starting to be thoughts about future research. And well, I see actually that I only have about 8 or 10 more minutes, so I'm going to be moving quickly. Here we have pupils from Holland who were reported about in one of the newspapers in that country as they participated in the Global Science Opera in 2017. And I would also like to mention that there was a lot of activity in Holland that year because part of the opera was actually streamed from the European Space Agency's Technology Center in Holland. And so my question is, so is this creativity? We're all saying we want creativity, we love creativity, we need to support creativity, and so on. Is this creativity? How do we know that? And if it is, how do we describe this specific kind of creativity? And what is the role of the teachers? Rosa was talking yesterday about how the teachers are also going to be learning in an inquiry process and in a creative process. And so what is the role of the teachers in this kind of creative process? So here's the reference to one article which I've developed with my colleagues about characterizing the kind of creativity that emerges in the science opera context. We are not going to have time to go very deeply into this, but whoever is interested can follow this later. But in a nutshell, the theoretical framework which was used to describe that kind of creativity, and in which to a large extent did succeed in describing the kind of creativity that emerges in science opera, was theorized as an active process of change, which relies on collaborative thinking to develop new ideas. And not only that, it is necessary to negotiate the needs of others in order to achieve shared ownership of the kind of creativity or the product that is emerging as a consequence of that creative process. And this might include friction because you necessarily have to engage with the values of others. So what I'm trying to say here is you cannot be creative in this kind of creativity without accepting and acknowledging and negotiating the needs of the other people that are contributing to the development of science opera with you. And I think based on what we want to do with our world, and now this is my interpretation, but I allow myself to reflect, based on what we want to achieve with our world, or I think even what we need to achieve with our world, these lessons are desirable in the educational context. And 5 emerging themes which emerged were making and being made. So you are developing yourself while you are developing the opera. You are having new ideas that matter for the society around you. You are working on your own, but also with others. You are immersed in the creation of science opera. We found out that pupils are immersed to the sense of they are experiencing what Csikszentmihalyi and Sawyer have referred to as flow. And to those of you who are familiar with that literature, and the teachers are taking control, but they are also necessarily sharing control. And here you see a Japanese pupil, a high school pupil in Japan, who participating in part of the scientific preparation for one of the Global Science Opera productions, and an image of the moon, which was taken by that pupil, or perhaps one of the pupils in that class. Yesterday, Rosa also mentioned the new European initiative, GSO for School, which started in the autumn of 2019. And here, one of the main initiatives is to develop a methodology for teaching teachers, or training teachers to create with their pupils in the Global Science Opera context. And we are exploring how to implement the methodology of, which is borrowed from design thinking, namely a process of feel, imagine, create, or share, which I think we are going to find out is a chronological process, or perhaps 4 different modes of understanding different aspects of the creative process. This is something which I think GSO for School is going to be dealing with. And these words embrace the human race as holistic creative beings, body, soul, and mind, because we are looking at the educational process from a wide and large and deep variety of perspectives. And here, so the question is, how do we approach what creativity implies or may imply within these various modes? And I think that this is something that Global Science Opera for School is going to be developing in further detail during the months to come as we start training our teachers. And I have begun trying to conceptualize that together with my colleagues. And so while I don't really like forms in the sense that yes, they are very useful, but they describe only a part of what actually is happening in the creative process, but sometimes they can help us conceptualize what it is we are doing. And here on the vertical, you see the 4 phases or modes of feel, imagine, create, share, and the 5 thematic, the 5 themes that emerged in the creative exploration, or the exploration of the characterization of creativity in the science opera, based on the theory Wise Humanizing Creativity. And our job is going to need to be to describe these various areas. And here I've tried 2. in the create and dealing with others. So we are talking about a creative process which influences how we collaborate with others and with the creation we are making. So to quote Chappell, we are making and being made. Again, we are developing our own identity as we are creating the creative, the product of our creative process. And in share, I borrowed a data excerpt which documents that pupils value that which matters for their community as part of the meaning of their opera. So pupils have been documented as being aware that the science opera that they are creating does have meaning and does have impact on the community around them. And so these are first steps in a process that GSO for school is might use or might approach in a slightly different way, but is going to be conceptualizing on the road to a more systematic teacher training in the context of the global science opera. And now I'd like to end this talk before we open up for questions with a musical contribution or a short musical performance, which was created in 2015 by these pupils in Zambia, the pupils of Prosperi Simpemba. If you're listening to this, Prosperi, thanks again for this very nice contribution. And these, the pupils, wrote this song about the solar system and how these planets in our solar system are orbiting around our sun, which actually is a medium-sized star. And this is a beautiful song, so enjoy it. And here we go.
Solar system we live in, the sun, the earth, and man gets them. 8 planets orbiting it is made of medium-sized stars. It's made of medium-sized stars. It's made of medium-sized stars.
So that was it. I'm going to stop sharing, and then if there are any questions, we can address them at this point. Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you so much for the wonderful talk, and thank you so much for keeping the just right 40 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you have a question, please write down. Please open the window of Q&A and please write your question. So before I receive any question, no question yet. So can I ask a question to you? Yes, thank you so much. It's just wonderful activities. So I want to know the initiation of this global science opera. How do you find your partners, the global partners in many countries? And how do you connect each other?
Well, there was a process in the beginning of the main people who were centered around developing these ideas contributing with their networks. So actually, I think the vast majority, especially that which happened outside of Europe, but also many of the countries in Europe, were originated from this network, the Global Hands-on Universe and the Galileo Teacher Training Program. And again, especially with what happened outside of Europe, but also in many European countries, Carl Pennypacker and Rosa Duran were extremely fundamental in reaching out to so many countries because they had networks in Japan, China, Australia, Brazil, and many other countries, with which they had already worked, which they knew personally, and still know, of course, and with which they already had a common language, those people, I see Kathan Kothari is here and many others, so in India. So those people knew so much about what Rosa and Carl had been doing for years and kind of could quickly take on another kind of activity with which Rosa and Carl are interested in doing. So I think just the majority of countries, especially in the first year, were through those networks. And of course, there were other countries like Ireland and Holland and Portugal and many others that we knew people in the context of other European initiatives, some even in Norwegian Research Council initiatives and so on. So actually it was kind of a putting together of a new network based on whoever wanted to participate from already existing networks. And the concept was anyone who wants to participate is going to be able to participate. So we didn't, and that made it easy to join for whoever wanted to. You could participate with as little or as much as you want to.
I think there are two kinds of participation, deeply involved in making opera or just watch and disseminate the product. So if I am the second person, how can I watch your wonderful opera?
Well, we stream it on, we stream
YouTube
it from a YouTube channel. There's always a live link, and we inform people well in advance. At this point in time, on this day, at this time, you can click on this and watch the whole thing. And that's always available on globalscienceopera.com. And we'll always say we have the Facebook group, Global Science Opera, and now there's a Facebook group and a website for Global Science Opera for school, and it's also going to be mentioned there. In addition, and what has been extremely exciting is that people have watched what is happening in their country live. So, for example, the picture you saw previously of the Brazilian students of Marcelo Souza were performing their part at the city hall of Campos, and they were watching the whole opera on the screen. But when it was the turn of the Brazilian pupils to perform the Brazilian scene, they were live on the stage, streaming to the rest of the world. So whoever was sitting in Brazil was watching that scene live. And this happened in many countries. It happened in Denmark, it happened in Holland, and it happened in many countries.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful. I should follow your YouTube channel. And excuse me, wait a moment. I received one question from Jane Robert Stad. And then your turn. Okay, I will read Jane's question. Anyone interested in knowing more about the Global Science Opera or joining with their class, please contact us. This is
information.
Information. I'm so sorry. Okay, please. Bernard, please say. Your question.
Yeah, so it was an amazing concept. A lot of investment, a lot of work all over the different countries. And it was a pleasure for us at ISA ESTEC to contribute to some of the activities and to have this class of pupils invading ESTEC. It was a good quiz. Now, I saw that you have been able to inspire in each country, students, school pupils to do it, and then to watch it all over. But how we need to democratize it. Then is that your program, GSO for school, where any school would have the opportunity to go through this type of experience? Because at the moment it's 1 or 2 schools per country. So how could we integrate that in a curriculum where you could say that in every school there could be every year a program like this?
Yeah.
So how can you make it happen?
Yeah.
That,
well, first there are in 2 ways. First of all, as you said, we are looking for ways to open this up and allow many more schools to participate. As you said, there have been in some countries, for example, in Brazil, there have been several schools which wanted to participate, and it's logistically challenging. So one of the things we are doing is to see how we can open this up. One way can be to have many more schools doing many more activities. Another way which we're thinking about is to see if can we develop, for example, apps or some kind of programs that allow many more pupils in many more schools to collaborate on the creation of one single scene. So the question is yes to both, but also I think Global Science Opera from its initiation is an initiative that is, there is no hierarchy in the Global Science Opera. We even write that on our website. This is a flat structure in which everybody's ideas is interacting with everyone else's. So absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
There's one short comment here from Janne. She's also writing that there is that I should mention, it's also possible for even more schools to participate in a more limited way if they want to through like the choir or what is now developing as a global dance mob. So you can follow informations on globalscienceopera.com and interact in that way.
Thank you for reading her comment. I was to read, but you did. Thank you so much. So we have 9 more minutes. Any other question? Okay, Handa-san, please start.
Okay, as one of the example to join the creative side. So in Japan, at the first, Rosa Doran required me who will join Global Science Opera. So I transfer that message to all Japanese HOU members, and the Hideyoshi Shinohara answered he will do.
Yeah.
Nowadays, although he moved to another high school, but his previous position of the high school is still joined.
Yeah.
So in the first year, Janet visited to Japan, and he gave the direct methodology of what is opera.
Yeah, I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, and the high school students respond very well, and I remember it's the president or the chief teachers is so impressed. Oh, my school student can speak English very well.
Yes, actually.
Without any translator.
Yes, I really.
Yeah, I think that is very new aspect to the science outreach. Not only science, but also say conversation, and also say some students make sound effects using the trumpet or some violin or I forgot, but so that is very well atmosphere, and Janet has a good, very good instruction. So in the first year, I also Shinohara-san invited me, and that is very impressed for me. And now the Hideo Shinohara is joined this meeting just now. I hope to give some comments from Shinohara-san.
Yeah, thank you so much, Handa-san.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, Shinohara-san already wrote his comment in Japanese on the chat screen. Yeah, so thank you so much, Handa-san, for mentioning about Shinohara-san's comment. And yeah, this Handa-san's point is very important. So the verbal conversation is not only one. So the violin and music, or so we have same theme under one sky, like IE 100, and you you connected people to people, student to student in different countries with the same theme under one sky. This is great. So any other comments or
And
okay? So okay.
I just want to say
uh,
thank you very much for that comment. And indeed, Janne had a very good experience traveling to Japan, and it was remarkable to see the output that that the Japanese students came up with, and it has really been a fruitful collaboration. So thank you very much.